Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Unstoppable Dad Project. Thank you for joining us, whether you are listening to us on the podcast or now watching us on the YouTube. Just as you are aware, as of last episode, we started publishing these podcast episodes up on our YouTube channel. So you can jump over on YouTube and search the Unstoppable Dad Project. You'll be able to find the podcast up on there, and you'll also be able to find some other videos that we're going to pop up, mainly around movement, mainly around exercise demonstrations, movement ideas, and things to help you dads out to try and give you the best chance to be as physically capable and as physically healthy as you can be. So that's up there on YouTube, as I always do before we get started on these episodes. If you are able to make sure that you have subscribed to us, not only on YouTube if you're watching this, but if you're listening to the podcast on Spotify, Apple, Stitcher, or wherever you are listening to this on, if you are able to subscribe to the podcast, if you're on Apple, jump on there and leave us a review, because that will help us get this out to more people. So by you helping us, we are able to continue to grow this and hopefully provide you with the best content and the best information that we can. On top of that, we have our other social pages, so the Unstoppable Dad Project on Facebook and at the Unstoppable Dad on Instagram. And while you're on the Facebook page, we have a free group for dads, which is called the Unstoppable Dad. So you can jump on and you can add yourself into there. Speaking of the group, last week or this week, I shared with the group, I shared a video that I did for our gym group, which I thought was going to be valuable for the dads in the group. And it's really around it was really around planning and time management. And it was basically around setting yourself up for success for the coming week and making sure that you spend the time to actually plan things out, because all too often not having enough time, or not feeling like there's enough time in the day, not feeling like we're effectively using the time that we have with our families, for ourselves, to really work on if it's a physical fitness thing that you want to achieve, maybe it's trying to refine that nutrition so you can get the best performance you can. But all too often, one of the biggest things I hear is I don't have time. And I'm sure we've all used it. I can being honest, there's been plenty of things that I have copped out on over the years where I've told myself that I don't have time to do it. And I'm sure a lot of you may have heard lines like, try changing the wording that you say to yourself when you say you don't have time for something to it's not a priority. And I subscribe to that idea a little bit, where I do believe that if it is a high enough priority for you, you are going to find time for it. But I do also think that there is a little bit that goes into it where sometimes we're not able to actually create enough time for ourselves to make it a priority. And I think a lot of that does come down to actually planning. And by planning, I mean actually sitting down at a desk, at a kitchen table, with a book, with a diary, and planning out when we are going to do things, chunking out time so that we are able to go, all right, I'm going to spend some time in the gym, or I'm going to spend some time in the backyard doing this program, or in the garage if you've got a home gym set up. I'm going to spend this time for meal prep. And then going one step further and looking at, like, if you feel like you're not getting enough time for the kids or enough time to connect with your wife or your partner, like actually blocking out time for that. Because if you really, really are super busy, it's hard to, it sometimes feels like you don't have time. And when you get down to it and you make it a little bit more regimented, it becomes easier to fit more stuff in, especially if you plan it and then you are disciplined with it. So the video that I did was around that. And if you want access to that, as I said, it's in our Facebook group. There's a link to the Facebook group or the Facebook page in the show notes if you're listening to this on any of the podcast platforms, or if you are watching this on YouTube. So go ahead to add yourself into it and then watch that. I'm not going to go into the details of the tools and stuff too much, but I believe a really important part when you feel you are too busy to do stuff is actually sitting down and planning for the week ahead and chunking out time and making sure that you have enough time to do things. And I think on top of that, one of the things that I think is we need to do is also highlight to ourselves by giving ourselves different data points on what we've done and what we haven't done, because all too often we do get caught up in thoughts and feelings and emotions about how we don't have, I want to do X thing and I want to change this, but I don't have time to commit to doing it. And if we're not planning it out, then it's probably not a high enough priority for us to actually commit to doing it. That's number one. But by looking at things, so number one, like when I talk about data points, I mean making things a yes or no answer, right? So a black and white answer, and you're trying to remove the feelings and emotions out of it. And some of you, when I've talked to other people about this, and especially when I've talked to some people in a one-on-one environment, one of the major criticisms I get with this is, well, Matt, like some things in life aren't just black and white. And you're right, they're not. Like some things aren't black and white. But I think especially if you, and this, the reason I mention this is really one thing that has helped me, especially when you go through times of high stress, you go through times of like high anxiety and high emotion, which we all do, we all go through, like it's perfectly normal feeling that way. But if it's getting to the point where you're completely overwhelmed and, you know, maybe you're not at the point where you want to talk to somebody, even though I would recommend that. But if we can make things like a yes or no answer, like did I do it? Yes or no. Did I have a plan for it? Yes or no. And we kind of chunk things down and make them very binary and black and white. Then we can try and work out and understand a plan for each of those things. So when you go through like a planning process for something that you want to add into your life, or improving other aspects of your life, like trying to get more time with the kids, or trying to get a better connection with your wife, or whatever the case might be, I think giving yourself a metric of whether you achieved it or not is a really important thing. And as I said, this is something that's helped me, but so let's use a couple of examples. One of the tools that I've used with different clients over the years is we break basically life into maybe 4 different components for them, because when they come to us and they come to me, obviously their physical health and well-being is really what we're working on. And so we break it into movement, and we break it into fuel, so like food, water, things like that. We break it into relationships, and then we break it into time for themselves. And basically there's a score in it, like there may only be 4 things that they need to do in a day. They need to try and move each day, which doesn't necessarily mean a gym session. It means they want to just, do something each day. They want to fuel their body properly, whatever that looks like. Okay, that means, eating whole foods, eating good, clean foods, fueling your body well so you feel great and you're able to function properly. They want to work on their relationship. So actually putting aside some time to connect with their wife and connect with their kids. So there's another thing. And then they want to do something for themselves as well too. And that could be maybe the movement thing, and going to the gym is the same thing. But every day, basically they're giving themselves a score out of 4. And it's like, number 1, I moved, tick. Number 2, I fueled my body well, and I made sure I did. And you can even break these down even further than just 1 point. The movement, you can just do 1 point. But then for the fueling thing, depending on what your individual goals are, and I've done a couple of episodes on nutrition and why I won't address nutrition first, but having it as a thing where it's just I'm eating well, I'm trying to fuel my body well is a good thing, rather than worrying about calories and macros and things like that. But if it's just about fueling your body well, maybe it's just about getting water intake. But if you just make it as 1 tick, 2, so there's 2 points. Then the other thing is actually connecting with your family. So whether that be your wife, kids, or whatever you've prioritized for that day. Again, you could break it down into more than 1 point, but there's tick 3. And then for themselves, you may tick point 1 and point 4 off in the same thing. You go to the gym, that's the thing that you've done for yourself, so you've automatically got 2 points for the day. But then if we do that over the course of a week, right, and we find like one day we're getting 4 points, another day we're getting 2, the next day we're getting 4, the next day we're getting 3, all of a sudden we get a score over a 7-day week out of 4 each day, which is that's 28 points. So then we sit down at the end of the week when we go through our planning process and we're like, all right, so out of the 28, I've managed to get myself 20 points. So I've missed 8 things. So what have I missed? So let's say, for example, I didn't move every day. Maybe I only moved 5 times in the week. Maybe I had a couple of days where, I enjoyed myself, which you should do. You shouldn't, eating and nutrition shouldn't be a chore. As I said, go back and listen to any of the other nutrition episodes as to why, but that's, I think there's times where you want to give yourself leeway. And then maybe I didn't spend some time with the kids, and maybe I didn't do something, and I didn't do like each of those things 2 days in the week, but I got 20 out of 28. And then all of a sudden we can start to look at, okay, when didn't I do these things? And then it becomes yes or no, right? It becomes binary. I didn't do it on this day, and then I can start to look at, is it that I run out of time? Is it that I didn't plan properly? Like, what are the reasons around why I didn't do it? Is it that I just got lazy? Did I not feel like doing it? Like, we're starting to understand our own personal triggers, why we didn't do things, why we're not following through with things. But by having a system and making it, and basically giving yourself those data points and giving yourself these things that you can look at and it's a yes or, did I do it? Yes or no? You can then start to, if there's something in your life which is not happening that you want to change, you can start to identify why we're not doing it, and we can start to build a plan to move things forward in a direction that we want them to move. Because say, for example, if I'm wanting to get more physically active, and obviously I keep reverting back to this because the last 10 plus years has been me helping people with this. So this is a really easy thing for me to try and use to explain it. And I'm using it, and it's like I sit down at the start of the week and I'm going to go to the gym 3 times a week, and I'm going to try and move every day, whether it just be go for a 30-minute walk, or maybe I've sat down at the start of the week and that thing is not a tick on my list every single day, but it's like I'm going to do 3 gym sessions a week, and then I'm going to do 2 walks a week. Okay, but then I get to the end of the week and I've only done 1, so I've missed the other 4. So what was missing? Why did I miss out on getting that, all the points that I sat down and planned at the start of the week? Was the planning process only me saying, this is what I'm going to do, and not actually sitting down and chunking out time for it in my day? Or was it that something came up, something that come up outside of my control? And this will happen week to week. Something comes up during my week, kids got sick, someone ended up in hospital, shit completely hit the fan at work, and especially at the moment, like, for example, use another example, if you run your own business, the business got shut down, so everything had to go on the back burner because I had to focus on that. These things are going to happen, and they're outside of our control. And if it's an outside of our control thing, the next week I can go, righto, I'm going to plan it out, I'm going to have the same plan, and I'm going to go and I'm going to reach that. Or is it something that maybe I just copped out? Maybe I didn't plan properly. Maybe I'm just like, no, this is what I'm going to do, but I didn't have a plan. Because the biggest thing about once you start doing data points and once you start giving yourself something to work towards and a goal and a measure and a metric around these actions, habits, and behaviors, then it becomes a whole bunch easier for you to then come and start to formulate a plan to correct whatever it is that you feel needs correcting. But without the data, and if we keep living within our feelings around a certain thing, so I don't feel like I'm getting anywhere, then we don't know. But if we're doing the actions, habits, and behaviors, and we're giving ourselves some data points, it can make it a lot easier to move ourselves forward. And it's going to be incremental. Maybe if your goal is to go and do 3 gym sessions a week and you're not even doing 1, maybe the goal just needs to be doing 1, but actually planning out the time to do that 1. Because the other thing is, when it comes to that planning process and making it binary for yourself, and yes and no, did I do it? If you don't plan it out, and you don't plan out a lot of aspects of your life, if you are a busy person, some people don't need to. Some people just need to make the commitment to doing it, and they'll automatically make time for it. And if this is you, all power to you. But I know a lot of the dads that I've dealt with, even a lot of just busy people in general, people without kids. The whole I don't have time thing, I don't have time to prioritize my health, really, really comes down to planning. it may mean that you don't have time to do, say, that group fitness thing that you want to do down the road, or you don't have time to do that particular plan. But if you sit down and you work out with a calendar, and I mean even put down, like, if you feel guilt, and this doesn't have to go for fitness or wellness or nutrition as well. This might be something. Another thing that I talk to dads about is I feel guilty because I'm not spending enough time with my kids. Well, plan it out. Sit down and plan it out. And then at the end of the week or at the end of the day, it becomes a did I do it, yes or no thing. It becomes binary. And then if you're not doing it, why did I not do it? So what do I need to move around? What do I need to change to make sure that I can do that? And following through on that plan. Whereas if you just go to yourself, oh, I'm going to spend more time with my kids, or I'm going to spend more time on myself or more time in the gym, but there's no actual concerted plan, then when you get to the end of the week, one or two things is going to happen. Number one, and the most common thing that happens with a lot of people, is I don't feel like I got anywhere. You don't feel like you got anywhere, and you may have actually spent more time. But how do you know if you don't have those data points? If you haven't chunked it down to see, hey, I did actually do what I want. And when you're starting something and you're initiating something new, I think you need to reassess it on a weekly basis, like not just waiting to see if something happens over a month. Because if you do that and you plan it out, and then it just becomes, did I do it, yes or no? If it's a no, why didn't I do it, and what do I need to course correct in order to get it moving in the right direction? But if it's a yes, you can give yourself a pat on the back and a job well done for starting to move it forward. And then what do you do the next week? You can do the same thing, or the week might change. Work might change, home life might change, whatever, so something might change. Okay, so I need to just formulate a new plan. So I spend that time at the start to give myself some metrics and give myself some data points. So when it gets to the end of the week and you've had an emotionally draining week, but you've followed through on the plan and you go, I don't feel like I got anywhere, you can actually look and go, you know what, I did. And that sometimes can change our mindset around whether we're actually making progress on things we want to make progress or not. Because the bigger goals, like wanting to bench press X amount, wanting to lose X amount of kilos, or whatever it is you're trying to work towards, will happen if you spend the time planning out and giving yourself some data points and some binary things to measure yourself on around just those simple behaviors that you need to move yourself forward. Because while it's a cliche and while it's been said to death, if you feel like you don't have time to do a particular thing, it is probably that it is not a priority. And you may sit down and you may do the planning stuff and the planning process that we're talking about and I've spoken about in that video, and then actually find out, well, maybe you don't have time to do something that you want to do because there are higher priorities in life. And that's the thing, that is, but until you've gone through that process and you've actually worked it out and you've actually put the time down on paper, you don't know. You're just guessing. You're just guessing, and you're kind of living in that emotion, which can be connected to maybe being so far away from a goal that you've been trying to achieve for so long. And that's, I guess, the biggest thing that I wanted to talk about in today's podcast is give yourself some data points and give yourself some metrics around the actions, habits, and behaviors you want to take if there is something that you want to change. And go through a planning process to do it. Don't just kind of hope and wish and throw something out there. That's the starting point. I'm going to commit to doing 3 classes a week or 3 sessions a week. I'm going to commit to changing this, changing that. But then the next step is to actually plan, and then the next step is to follow through with it. And then at the end, you need to reassess, readjust. And the only way you can do that is to give yourself, did I do it? Yes or no? If I didn't, why didn't I? And how do I adjust and how do I course correct? Because metrics they're important for giving yourself direction. They're important for giving yourself to help identify any potential issues and shortfalls that may be happening within these changes and these habits that you've got to talk. But probably one of the most important things, especially when you feel like something is really insurmountable, they're a really good way when you do achieve them of giving yourself a nice little pat on the back each week. I've achieved something, and feeling good about getting some momentum up, because once you start to accumulate those little wins, they're going to add up over time. And then when you look back over a 6-month, 12-month, 18-month period, the change and the difference in where you are from where you started when you made that decision that you are going to prioritize this thing, to where you are 12 months, 18 months down the track is going to be night and day. So spend some time. Work out some data points for yourself. If you need help around that stuff, obviously reach out. I've got the video up in the Unstoppable Dads Facebook group, so feel free to jump on in there, have a watch of that. There is also some free resources that I'm happy to hand out to anybody that would like that. So just comment on the video in the group and we can get that out to you. But if nothing else, if you're not already, make sure you spend some time planning. Give yourself some data points around whether you're doing the actions, habits, and behaviors that you want to do within your life that are important to you. And then celebrate those wins. Celebrate those little wins and celebrate moving yourself forward week in, week out, day in, day out. Because all too often for us as dads, we get kind of caught up in that macro view where we're looking at life as a whole and we forget to kind of celebrate those little wins on a daily and weekly basis. So that's it for this week. Hope you enjoyed the podcast. Like, share, subscribe, share it around with all your friends. We'll catch you all next week. Bye.